Today, my job and my responsibility is to invite you in on a secret. And the secret is that you play a significant role in the miracles that take place in your life. In fact, part of miracles taking place in your life, one of the key ingredients is uncomfortable situations. No time to warm up. We're just going to go right there. And part of miracles taking place are when difficulties happen, when hardships happen, when pain happens. Because uncomfortability, pain, hurt, disappointment, they cause you or they force you to answer a question. And the answer to that question will determine the frequency and the level into which you experience miracles in your life. And so I want to start by asking you a different question, not the question, and we'll get to the question. Because again, I think when you answer that question, miracles become a regular occurrence in every day, in every way, and in every area of your life. And so I want to start this kind of like if this was a preamble, if you will, or preface. I want to start this by asking you the question, have you ever experienced or have you ever had this feeling that your life was supposed to account for something? Like it's supposed to mean something, but for some reason, like where you are right now, it may not it may not be all clear. It could be just like a preview in a movie and you're excited to play a part because it's your life, it's your movie. You want to be there but you can't quite figure it out. It hasn't really materialized. But you're excited, you're getting the popcorn ready. Like man, I've got these dreams, I've got these desires, like these things, like my life is going to count for something. Is there anybody in here? Is that just me? All right. You know, it reminds me because when I was 10 years old, I used to take when my father would leave the house, I would get his shirts and I would put his shirts on and I would try to tie a tie. It probably just balled it up or something like that. And I would put on his suit jackets and I would go in the bathroom and I would lock the bathroom door so nobody would disturb me. And I would get a stool and I would stand and I would look in the mirror and I would dream about, and I would see people in what appeared to me to be a conference room table. And because I thought my dad was a businessman, so I just dreamt that, like, I'm going to be a businessman. And I used to take his business cards, his white cards with the blue and red writing. It said Charles H. Poland, import and export. And I would dream about passing those cards out around the kitchen sink, and I would do that. I would do it several times a week. I would actually get in trouble because I would never put my dad's stuff back. It was so bad that my dad used to put padlocks on his, I promise you it's a true story. He put padlocks on his bedroom door so we couldn't go in there. And so, but that was my dream. And like you, I think some of you have some dreams that God has placed in your heart. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is exciting. This is my life. This is going to be awesome. My life is going to count for something. And guess what? Life happens. Yeah. Life happens. And when life happens, you know what? The movie doesn't play out the way that we expected it. It starts to play out differently, and what ultimately happens is maybe it's divorce that happens in your life and it affects you some sort of way. Maybe it's a tragedy that happens in your life and it affects you in some sort of way. Maybe it's you made some bad choices along the way, or maybe you got derailed and because something happened, you found yourself in an uncomfortable circumstance or situation, you experienced some pain and it caused you to be derailed, and now all of a sudden you're kind of like, man, is this thing really happening? In fact, it's like the devil has taking a wheelbarrow filled with dirt and he's just dumped it all over your heart, all over your dreams, and now what seems like was going to be a promise has now become a curse. Yeah. For me, it was at 12 years old when I realized that my father was barely a businessman. In fact, he hardly worked. And the result of him hardly working oftentimes left our family without electricity in our home. Sometimes it left our family without heat in the wintertime. And listen, I'm in every way, I'm a product of my environment. Everything that you would imagine that could happen to an inner city kid, I experienced it all. In fact, at 12 years old in 6th grade, because I was so angry with my father, not only because he wasn't a businessman, but he was also a womanizer. And there was not one time in my life growing up that I ever remember that there's a time where my father didn't have somebody on the side, but still married to my mother. And so the pain that caused in my life caused me to be angry, and I started having behavioral problems in school. And so what happened was when I graduated from school, even though I had a good job Monday through Friday, I would go to work with a shirt and tie because I was a businessman. But my life was derailed because Friday, Saturday, and Sundays I ran the streets and I thought I was a tough guy. And listen, I don't know why I thought I was a tough guy. I was only 150 pounds, 5'11", but everywhere I went, when I would go to bars, I would pick fights. Like when I would go to club, I would pick fights. Anywhere I could, I would pick fights. And one day I picked a fight with a guy. And I'm embarrassed to say, even now as I talk about it, like, I handled, I did my thing, not proud of it. But he had a brother. And so it was a Friday night at 1 o'clock. I found myself in a very uncomfortable situation. We have this fight, and I'm fighting, and getting the best of the guy, and some other guys there, and then his brother opens up his trunk, but I didn't realize because their lights were in my eye, and I didn't see the gun, but I heard the gun. And this is a black guy in the city. He had a shotgun. Y'all don't hear what I'm saying. and he cocks, I heard it. And he puts it to my head. And it was that in that uncomfortable moment, I put my hands up. I said, "You win." And it was in that moment that I realized that my life was more than I was experiencing in that moment. And so that Sunday, I went to church for the very first time. And the reason why I say that is because I always had a healthy respect for the church, the building, the institution, but I never went in it. I knew what it was supposed to do, but I never went in it. But when a difficult situation happened for me, it made me start thinking, and then I had to answer a question that we all have to answer today. Now, I don't know what your situation is, but maybe God has brought you here today because you've been in an uncomfortable situation, and now you're sitting there thinking, like, you know what? I've got to answer a question because if I don't know what's going to happen with me. I need a miracle to take place in my life. Ooh, I told you I get excited. I'm trying to keep it together right here. So now we're in this situation because here's the thing, right? When you have difficulty in your life, when you have these uncomfortable moments, and when you're not sure of what you're supposed to be doing or who you should be, you know what happens? We make it up. We make stuff up. I'm not telling you that it's bad. I'm not telling you it's wrong. I'm just telling you it's true. When you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing, you make it up. And the worst thing that you can ever do is be successful in the wrong assignment. Somebody ought to write that down. The worst thing that you could ever do is be successful in the wrong assignment. I got derailed, and I started trying to be successful as a tough guy, and it almost killed me. And so now I'm navigating through life, and I'm realizing that all of us have to answer this question, because for you to be the same, for you to be ordinary, your pores will scream against that at every part of your body, because God didn't design you to be ordinary. God designed you to be extraordinary, to experience miracles so that you can work out his purpose in your life. But you will make it up if you don't answer the question that I'm going to share with you today. And the secret that was revealed to me, it radically changed my life. And I'm believing that there's somebody here today that your life is going to be radically changed if you can answer this question once I let you in on this secret. And so here's the thing. It happened a little over 2,000 years ago with 13 men together. Or I would say 12 disciples and Jesus, when they began to have this question, these men had to answer the same question that you and I have to answer today. And so I'm going to get into that right now. So do me a favor, turn to Matthew chapter 16, verse 13 through 18, because what this question did, the way that they answered this question, it actually changed the entire landscape of society as they knew it, and it's still changing society today. It's going to change your life. It's going to change your marriage. It's going to change how you parent your children. It's going to change how you work. It's going to change your business. It's going to change this church if you can grab a hold to this secret. You ready? Yes. All right, so Matthew chapter 16, verse 13. If you have it, say amen. All right, that's about 10 of you. If you have it, say amen. Amen. Awesome, let's go. I'm ready to go. We're going to have some fun here. So it's here now. It says in verse 13, it says, when Jesus arrived in the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and Caesarea Philippi was a city that was known for its idolatry. It was known for its moral decline. It was known for the disciples felt this level of uncomfortability, and Jesus is actually exposing them to some spiritual darkness. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm with Jesus and I'm watching Jesus do all of these miracles, and I'm like, yo, this is cool. Hanging out with Jesus, we get to eat because he multiplies food. Like, we get to see miracles. Like, Jesus, man, this is my man. I would feel some type of way if now Jesus is taking me to this place where there's all this moral decline and decay, and they're worshiping all of these deities and all of these dead gods, and they're doing all this crazy stuff. I'm like, yo, G, what we doing here? Like what's happening? Yo, man, why are we here? Like, come on, let's go back to Bethany. Let's go back to Jerusalem. Like, what is happening? Why are we in this place? Because Jesus is trying to teach us is that when we are uncomfortable, and if we answer the question, that miracles will happen and they will change our actual life. You hear what I'm saying? I hope some of you are feeling uncomfortable right now. And so he takes him to Caesarea Philippi, and look at what happens, because every single one of us is going to happen to all of us. He says, what are people saying about who the Son of Man is? And now I need you to understand, of course Jesus knew what people were saying about him. He got all of the news app alerts. He was watching CNN, he was watching Fox, and he was reading his Twitter feed and getting all of the information about what people were saying about him. But the reality of this situation is that you and I have to answer that question. Doesn't matter what anybody else says. Let's keep reading in verse 14. He says, they replied, some think he is John the Baptizer. Some say Elijah. Some say Jeremiah or one of the other prophets. Look at this. And then he pressed them. I hope you feel the tension in this, because they've been with Jesus. Now they're in this uncomfortable situation, and he says, who do people say that I am? And then they're telling him what everybody else is saying. And he's like, no. Who do you say that I am? Like, do you feel the tension in that? Because I need you to understand is that he put them on the spot. And when he put them on the spot, he's helping them to realize that it is what's most important is not what other people say, but it's about what you say. Because the decisions of the crowds can never substitute for your personal decision. I'm talking about miracles here. It doesn't matter what everybody else say. When you're in your uncomfortable situation, when you're in your uncomfortable moment, when you're dealing with the pain and the hurt that you're experiencing in life, guess what? What everybody else says, what Pastor JD says, what Pastor Leah says, what I say ain't gonna matter. It's what you say that's gonna matter. And we all have to answer that question of who do you say that I am? And guess what? You're going to answer that question. Here's how I say it. You're going to answer that question whether you're walking or whether you're rolling. Let me tell you, here's what that means. Alive, dead or alive, you're going to answer that question one way or another. You're going to either answer it on your own volition, or you're going to answer it when somebody rolls you up here in the coffin and they start talking about, hey, you know what, they lived a good life. You're going to have to answer that question. None of us are going to be able to escape answering that question, but the answer to this question is the key to miracles. Like every day in your life, this is it. This is the key. And so here's what I want you to know is that he goes on, and this is where it is. This is where it is. Pay close attention to this. In verse 16, Simon Peter said, you are the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Because remember, in Caesarea Philippi, there was a bunch of dead gods, a bunch of dead deities. So here's what he says. He says, you're a son of the living God. And then he goes in 17 and 18, he says, Jesus came back You got to hold on here. He says, God bless you, Simon, son of Jonah. You didn't get that answer out of books or from teachers. Woo-hoo, this is getting good. He says, my Father in heaven, God himself, look at this, let you in on this secret of who I really am. And now, somebody say, and now. And now. One more time, say, and now. And now I'm going to tell you who you are, who you really are. Here's the point that I want to make, is that when we confess who Jesus is, Jesus begins to declare who we are. Oh, goodness. Jesus' declaration was a direct response to Peter's confession. I'll say it this way. Jesus is saying, since you can tell me who I am, I'm going to tell you who you are. Oh, you got to catch this. In other words, so Jesus, this is who you are in my life. Jesus says, Mark, well, this is who you are. It's like a volley going back and forth. Every time you do it, it's like, Jesus, this is who you are in my life. Jesus says, okay, well, let me tell you who you are. So when I begin to invite Jesus into my life and I'm like, Jesus, you know what? You are the Lord of my life. You are the Son of the living God and you are the Lord over my marriage. And Jesus says, well, okay, Mark, let me tell you the type of husband that you are. Oh, you missed it. So when it's, and the miracle takes place. So here's what happens. So with Jesus, this is who you are. You're the Lord and Savior over my life, and you're the God over my children. And Jesus says, okay, you acknowledge, you confess who I am in my life. Come here, Mark. I'm gonna tell you who you are as a parent. And then he just begins to tell me. Y'all missed it. So he's, you know what, Lord, I'm having some difficulty. I'm having some challenges. I'm having some uncomfortable moments in my job. Jesus, I give you the lordship over my life and over this job. And then Jesus comes back and he says, okay, you confess me. I'm going to declare who you are in this moment. I'm going to declare who you are as an employee. He does it in every area of your life. And here's the secret. And here's what we often miss is that most of the time we miss the fact that, you know what? Let me pause right there for a minute because I know some of you right now might be having some difficulty in hearing this message, but let me show you something in Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 3. I told you I get excited. Sometimes it goes so fast, but here it is in Jeremiah chapter 33. I want you to see this because I pray this every day when I got this revelation. He says, call unto me and I will answer you. I'm reading the Amplified version, and he says, and not only will I answer you, but here's what I'm going to answer you with. I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to show you great and mighty things which have been confined and hidden, which you do not know and understand, and you cannot distinguish. The NLT version says, if you ask me, it says that I'm going to tell you the remarkable secrets of your life. So what am I saying to you today? This idea that you and I make this confession of who Jesus is and he declares who we are, I need you to understand this, is that confessing of Jesus is not a one-time event. See, the challenge is that most of us as believers have just kept this idea towards salvation. But it's more than salvation. What Jesus is saying is that this confession of your faith is more than a one-time event, but it's an ongoing experience. And in every area of my life, I can invite Jesus into my life in order for him to reveal to me who I am. And when he reveals to me of who I am, then I'm able to live that out in every area of my life. In every area of my life. And that's the exciting part because when you and I, see, Paul says to us, he says, listen, you have to work out your salvation. Well, how are you going to work out your salvation if you're not inviting Jesus into the process? How are you going to do that? See, the greatest miracles that have happened in my life are not the things that have happened to me, it's the things that have happened in me. See, it's the time that I've spent with God and the time in prayer, the time in devotion, the time when I'm asking God and I'm saying, God, here is the difficulty that I'm experiencing in my life. And he comes in and he shows me a picture. He gives me a word and he says, okay, Mark, since you've given this situation over to me, I'm going to tell you who you are. And a miracle takes place right in that moment. The miracle takes place because I'm no longer looking at it through my eyes, but I'm looking at it through his perspective. Oh, I hope you're catching this morning. Oh, Lord. And so now I need you to understand as we keep reading, It says, you are Peter, and you are a rock. He says, and this is the rock on which I will put my church together. I'll put together my church. Notice what Jesus didn't say. He didn't say, on Peter, I will build my church. Because Peter's life was not rock-like. And sometimes our life isn't rock-like. In fact, Peter was unstable. Peter was unreliable. Peter was impulsive. Peter, this is verse 18, 5 verses later, Peter let the devil get into him and he started rebuking Jesus. How can he build a church on that guy? He can't. He can't. He can't. And so what happens is Jesus really says, he says, on this rock, I will build this church. And so Jesus is teaching us that the church, he's not building his church per se on a person. He's building this church on a process. Got to catch this. What he's saying is, the process is when you declare who I am, or when you confess who I am, I declare who you are. Yes. That process, I'm going to build the church. But he wasn't talking about the church building, because the church building didn't exist. He was talking about you. Yes. Yes. And when that happens, when you confess and invite God in, and he declares who you are, and when you do what he tells you to do, you invite God into the process, and when God shows up on the scene, nothing can ever stay the same. Miracles begin to happen. Look, I'm gonna keep going because Jesus, he invites us in to be a part of the process. He's not talking about the structure or the building. He's talking about this idea that I'm going to gather my people. How does he gather his people? Because when they confess, he declares, they respond to what he declares, right? So that's what, this is the first mention of the church in the New Testament. And that word, when you look it up in the Greek, is the word ecclesia. Some people say, ecclesia, but that word is broken down into two words, ek and kaleo, which means to call out. Just to call out. How can you gather people if they don't respond to the call? Yes. Do you hear what I'm saying? So Jesus is saying is that when I call you because you've confessed me, and when you respond to that, that is when miracles happen in your life. Yes. Oh, man. I'm sorry, I'm so excited. So here's the thing, I'll prove it to you. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 24 and 25, he says this is the New Living Translation. He says, anyone who listens to my teachings, it's the same thing, and follows, that person is wise, like a person who builds his house on a solid rock. You can't build your house on a solid rock. Anybody who built a house, you cannot build a house on a solid rock. There's a process to it. You got to build the foundation. You got to build the structure. You got to build the roof. You got to put decorations. You got to do all of those things. It's a process. So what Jesus is saying is that anyone who listens, look at that, hearing and obeying, okay, confessing and declaring. He says, though the rain comes and the flood waters rise and the winds beat the house. Did you notice that? He says, though. One translation says when. It doesn't say if. Which takes us back to the beginning, that part of the miracle that you will experience in your life is going to come from uncomfortable situations. Because uncomfortable situations are the thing that you need in order for you to determine who Jesus is in your life. It's the time that you acknowledge who Jesus is and invite him into the process for a miracle to take place. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And if you built your life on the confession of who Jesus is, look at what he says. He says, when they beat against the house, when trouble comes, when uncomfortability comes, when divorce comes, when pain comes, when wayward children comes, when you getting fired, when all of those things happen, you won't collapse because you've been built on the bedrock. I'm so excited. And so let's finish this. Back to Matthew 16, verse 18. It says, this is the rock on which I will put together my church. A church so expansive with energy that not even the gates of hell will be able to keep it out. So when you confess who Jesus is, Jesus declares who you are. That produces an energy. That produces a movement. That produces a life that the gates of hell cannot stand against you. What am I saying? That you cannot be stopped. you cannot be destroyed. You cannot be thwarted. You can't be derailed. Why? Because the enemy cannot come against a person who hears and a person who obeys, a person who confesses, a person who declares. He cannot come against your marriage. He can't come against your children. He can't come against your job, your business. He can't come against this church. He can't come against anything that declares and receives the message and the vision and the words of Jesus Christ. Can't do it. He can't do it. He can't do it. No matter how bleak it seems, no matter how dark it seems, no matter how far you've gone, if you just begin to confess where you are and who Jesus is, when he still, even in the midst of your difficulty, he still will show you who you are. And just like I was in the street on Friday at 1 p.m. with a gun to the head, he said to me, "This is not who you are." And it led me to church. The same guy ended up being in jail because the following week he actually shot somebody. And I'm sitting there like, sometimes people ask me like, why are you so excited? Why are you so happy? Because I'm living in overtime. I shouldn't even be here. I should be a statistic, but I'm a miracle. You hear what I'm saying? And so what happens is these uncomfortable circumstances of my life and of your life have always led me to ask the question, who is Jesus in my life? And so now I go to church, I'm confessing and I'm saying, Jesus, like, this is who you are in my life. God begins to continue to reveal to me. Now I'm a businessman, and I'm barely a businessman. And I remember, the next stage of our uncomfortable stories that I started, a sales rep. I was a major account sales rep at a technology company, and the first 3 years was just so hard. And there were times where I went home and I got into bed and I cried because I said, this is too hard, I can't do it. It was an uncomfortable moment. I was just like, I can't do it. I'm a terrible sales rep. And then my wife, I remember we were sitting in our mother's dining room, and chairs are facing each other. It was a difficult moment, couldn't pay our bills. We were broke as a joke, like without the E, like we were broke. And I remember she was sitting there, she was like, Mark, he was holding my hand. She was like, man, I think you need to get another job because you're gonna get fired. And it was just her, wife, just like, I gotta protect you, baby, like, And it was in that moment that I remember saying, Jesus, would you come into my life? Would you take control of this situation? Would you please help me? Because I don't know who I am right now. And it began to show me. And for the next 17 years, the Lord just worked miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle. And I mean, just success beyond my wildest dreams. Traveled around the world beyond my wildest dreams. Top sales rep in the industry, like crushing it. Miracle after miracle. But I was successful in the wrong assignment. And so even while Jesus was working miracles in my life, the fulfillment that I was looking for was never there. Because I got to the top of the mountain and I started looking around and I was like, this can't be it. This can't be it. What is going on? And I'm not talking about small money. I'm talking about big money. I thought like, this is like money that my family has never seen before. And I'm like, this ain't it. But you know what fulfillment came from? Where fulfillment came from? Because while I was in that job, there were people that came through that were having difficult moments and situations that were going on in their life, and I began to coach them. And I remember one of my best friends, Steve Vospikian. He's an Armenian guy. I love him, and he left the company to become a lawyer, and that just brought so much fulfillment in my life. I remember Jenna Rankin, who was there and working, was like, hey, this is my job, and we started having conversations. She was on my team, and then she left and she works in the athletic department at Princeton University. I remember my wife's cousin Brandon, and he's an engineer at Toyota, and I remember asking him, I said, man, what in the world made you, do this and become successful as an engineer and all these things? He said, man, it's because of the words that you told me. I had forgot that I was coaching him and trying to help him so he can get, because he was so disappointed that he didn't get accepted into the college that he wanted to get into. And God just gave me this supernatural wisdom to speak to him, and miracles started happening in his life. Things started happening. I started getting fulfillment in my life. And then it dawned on me. It dawned on me that when I was 10 years old, when I was putting on my dad's suit jackets, and I was looking in the mirror, the people that I saw in the mirror were not people around a boardroom table. It was an audience of you. And so I said all of that to say is that all of the hardships, the series of hardships, the altercation, being broke, getting ready to get fired, not being able to do the job, miracle after, I can go on and on and on about the radical miracles that have happened in my life. But I can't take credit for it. The only thing that I can take credit for is that I had gotten to the point where I couldn't do anything except for confess Jesus. And Jesus began to show me. The only thing that I did was just obeyed what Jesus said. And sometimes we make miracles difficult and we make it all mystical, but it's just simple. Hearing and obeying. Hearing and obeying. And miracles will take place in every area of your life.